Hey, what's good, everybody? It's me, your hero, Benjamin Banks, and you're watching Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks. And today, it is another brand new episode of Who's That Cosplayer? And joining me on today's episode is the tallest Silver. How are you doing today, Silver?
I am doing well, Benjamin. Thank you for asking.
You're welcome.
Well, I mean, as well as anyone can be during a pandemic.
No, hey, we're all doing well. That's what I can say. Yeah, but I just want to say thank you so much for joining me on Who's That Cosplayer. This is, a little series that I do on YouTube that's kind of a breakaway from the podcast Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks that I do with Trav and D. And, I just love cosplay. I love, seeing people in costumes as some of my favorite characters and, just the energy that people have when they're cosplaying as one of their favorite characters. And I just want to say, thank you so much for joining me. And thank you for coming up here as Scarlet Witch. I love your cosplay.
Thank you. It's great to be back on YouTube. I used to do a lot of YouTube videos and things like that back in my earlier days of cosplay, just for silly shenanigans in the comic book world, right? And I really haven't done that. It's funny because I actually became a substitute teacher for a while.
Nice.
And I was at an after school thing because it was actually the old high school I went to that I started teaching at.
Mm-hmm.
And a kid comes up to me and he's like, I know you. Why do I know you? I'm like, I don't know. And takes about 10 minutes and he snaps his fingers and he says, oh, you're tallest Silver, you go to conventions. And I'm like, he's like, I've been following your YouTube channel since I was a kid. I'm like, you're still a kid. What are you talking about?
Your identity is no. Oh man, that's funny. And that's one of the cool things about cosplay, because it's the same thing like with voice acting. It's just like you don't know who the person is behind the costume, especially like if they paint their face or they're wearing a mask. So it's just like when they see you in person or they know, it's just like, oh snap, like that's tallest Silver. Like she's here at the school. Like this is awesome. Like I'm seeing you in your civilian clothes. It's just like finding out that Bruce Wayne and Batman are the same person. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. And that's what I always joke about, especially with convention friends. Like if I've met them maybe 3 or 4 times, mm-hmm. I will always say, look, I'm the civilian that knows Clark Kent can't be Superman because Clark has glasses. Supes doesn't. Mm-hmm. You're completely unrecognizable.
And I think I remember reading something where they said that, I think it was in the comic book, where they said that Superman's glasses have some sort of ability that make people not know or not notice that Superman and Clark Kent are the same person. It's the same thing like when I was growing up watching Sailor Moon, and I'm just like, well, how do people not know that like these are
Serena looks exactly the same as Sailor Moon?
It's just like how? I mean, like they're just wearing outfits now. But hey, we're talking about too much nerd stuff. I still got to finish doing this introduction. Before we get into today's interview, make sure that you like this video, you subscribe to the channel, and you hit that bell button so that way you're always notified when we have new content here on Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks. So let's go ahead and get into this interview. Again, like I said, thank you so much for joining me, tallest Silver. Something that we do here on Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks for all of our guests is we ask, what is your origin story? Every hero or villain has one. So tell everybody that's watching right now, who is the tallest Silver?
Well, it's a moniker that I took back in my tweens. It's a reference to Invader Zim, of course, the almighty tallest. Mm-hmm. And that was really the first fandom that I dove head first. Gotta collect the merch, gotta watch it whenever it's on. And of course, it was a show that was sidelined by Nickelodeon. Mm-hmm. Right? So it was on at odd hours of the day, and obsessed, like absolutely obsessed. And that's when I started to have like an online presence and communicating with other fans on message boards and all of that. And that's actually how I got interested deeper into comics. So I always grew up with like Archie comics, and of course, like the kid-friendly Superman and Batman the animated series, like praise be it. Things like Sailor Moon After School, of course. But Invader Zim was really the first thing that got me more interested in going to comic book conventions. There was, I think it's defunct now, the Alternative Press Expo, APE, in San Francisco. And that was when Jonan Vasquez, the creator of Invader Zim, and of course Johnny the Homicidal Maniac and Squee and I Feel Sick and, you know, all those comics, is going to be there. So of course my teenage self, 13 at the time, like, I have to go. Let's do it. And APE was part of the same convention track as WonderCon and Comic-Con. Like, capital C, San Diego Comic-Con.
Yeah, for sure.
The
yeah,
works. Exactly. And so that's how I found out about Comic-Con. And I started going in 2003 because I really wanted to be a cartoonist when I grew up. That was my teenage ambition. And so my mom and I did a road trip down to San Diego from the Bay Area and just had so much fun talking to the small press, like the artist alley and the small press area. And yeah, okay, DC and Marvel, they have those big booths. The Sci-Fi Channel used to have the best booth. You can mark my words on that.
But a lot of people don't remember that original Sci-Fi logo. They only know the SYFY. They don't know that SCI.
Not the sippy stuff. No. The original Sci-Fi. They used to have this huge booth where it was like this amorphous thing with all these projections on it. And it was a great spot to sit because there is no place to sit at Comic-Con.
Now, I've never been to San Diego Comic-Con. It's something that's on my list of places to go. But I mean, like, that's crazy that they didn't have anywhere to sit there. I mean, like, has it changed over the years? Like, do they have places that you can sit down, or is it still just go, 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 go?
It's always go, 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 go. Like, if you try to pop a squat near the wall or something just to get off of your feet for a hot second, securities often say, no, move along, you can't sit here. Dang, so yeah, it's a lot of crowd control, to be honest. But when I started going to Comic-Con, you could still buy tickets day of. None of the hot sellouts, like trying to be in that waiting room of death, seeing as days are selling out or anything like that. You could still buy day of, and it wasn't even that long ago that you could do that. But that's when I saw people cosplaying for the first time. And then in 2005, I had won a horror makeup contest.
Nice.
I did Sally from The Nightmare Before Christmas. And it turns out one of the judges actually was an animator on Nightmare.
Oh, nice.
And
that's awesome.
I swept the category. And I felt, because now this was an award-winning makeup thing with my Sally dress that I made by hand, that I could cosplay at Comic-Con too, because I have that credential now. And I was 16 at the time. And so I strut my stuff on the Comic-Con floor, and it was incredible. I had so much fun. But there is something to be said about doing a con in civvies, in like civilian attire.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And then in cosplay, because it's a totally different experience. I feel like in civvies, you can really take your time. You can really like shop around, get the best price for things, interact with creators a little bit more. And then in cosplay, you still get the interaction with the creators, but usually it's wow, look at you, or something like yeah, and you're constantly getting stopped, which is fun and, you know, great to geek out with other people that like the same thing that you do. but it's a totally different experience and so much more exhausting.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's like how we were saying earlier about, Bruce Wayne and Batman and Clark Kent and Superman. It's just like if Bruce Wayne, well, I'm not going to say Bruce Wayne, because if Bruce Wayne was walking around a convention, of course people are going to want to stop and take pictures with him. But if Clark Kent was walking around a convention, like he's just, a regular civilian. But if Superman was walking around a convention, like he would shut the convention down. And I just want to say it's awesome that, when you went to, because it wasn't your first con, you had already gone through your first con, but it's just like your first time cosplaying, because this was a costume that you had wore in a contest and you won. And then you went to a con and it's just like you shut it down. Like everybody wanted to take pictures with you. They complimented you on how amazing the costume was. And I always say that it's always awesome when you take the time and energy to put something together yourself. And it's not to crap on people who purchase costumes, because it's just like at the end of the day, cosplay is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be for everybody. And not everybody has the time to, actually sew something or put something together. So pinky's up to you to, go into your first con. And you were Sally from The Nightmare Before Christmas, which is a classic. It's a Disney classic. And I love that movie. It's one of the things that I love to do every holiday around Christmas is put that movie on, get a hot cup of cocoa, put the giant marshmallows in it, and just sit back and relax and watch it, because it's a classic.
It is. And what's so much fun about cons too is that you see so many different genres all merging together, especially for the bigger conventions like Comic-Con, Dragon Con, New York Comic-Con, whatever. It's all this amalgamation, which has been so much fun. It lost a little bit of its sparkle, I'll have to say, when the movie studios started to make headway there. I'm just gonna say that, maybe controversial, but but you can still find that magic in smaller conventions, I found.
For sure.
And making those connections, just like the geek connections of I see you, you see me, we like this thing that maybe wasn't very popular, and suddenly gained popularity, or let's just have a friendly nerd debate about the merits of Magneto being the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver's father. I will die on that hill.
I am so happy that you brought that up, because that was the question that I was going to segue into, is because, I always do my research when, I do Who's That Cosplayer, and I check out all of the cosplays that the cosplayers they have on their pages. And, I noticed that, you're more, you lean more towards Marvel. You do have some DC stuff on your page, but I mean, even right now, like you're cosplayed as the Scarlet Witch. And, I'm the same way when it comes to, the stories and stuff, because we grew up reading these comics or watching the animated series, and Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are Magneto's kids, whereas in the MCU it's like they're not. But I'll say I would assume that you watch Loki.
Yes.
Okay, so you saw the season finale.
Yes.
Okay.
I freaked out.
I just want to make sure, because I don't want to spoil anything. And everybody that's watching right now, if you have not watched Loki, I'll say go ahead and skip this portion, because we don't want to ruin anything for you. But man, when they showed that it was a bunch of different multiverses, and I was just like, yo, can we finally get the X-Men in the MCU? Like, that's all that I want, because I'm a huge X-Men fan. And it's just like that season finale, and just knowing that it's like we have all these different universes out there. Like what were your thoughts on seeing that?
Well, I was over the moon ecstatic to see He Who Remains. Kang the Conqueror. He's Kang the Conqueror.
Yeah,
like,
he's
straight
Kang
up,
the
it's
Conqueror.
Kang. And I'm like, when are they gonna say it? When are they gonna say it? And so that whole scene was brilliant. And I thought they were actually going to introduce the X-Men in WandaVision. So when we had Evan Peters come in as Pietro and not Peter, I almost every episode of WandaVision, I was in near hysterics, which I guess is appropriate for a Wanda fan. No shade. But just the little cliffhangers that they would do, or the nuance of this is subtly creepy and unsettling. And I love that. I wish they kind of leaned a little bit more into that. They touched it in Age of Ultron, the kind of glitchy way that Wanda was moving at first, but then we don't see that ever again. And as much as I don't like Age of Ultron,
honestly, I feel like Age of Ultron, it was my least favorite in the Avengers movies. It was one of those, I don't know, man. I just feel like Josh Whedon was trying to do something, and I mean, it makes sense when you go back and you watch it now after you've seen everything. But at the same time, it's just like I'm glad that they changed the direction that they went in with the characters and whatnot.
Who's that cosplayer?
Cupcake cosplay.
Age of Ultron is just, it's sloppy, and it doesn't feel. I have a lot of issue with it, but regardless.
That's for another conversation, because it's like we can go on like how Age of Ultron isn't that good, but I mean it served its purpose. It paved the way. He who remains. He said, like, I paved this for you. That's what Age of Ultron did. It paved the road so that way we could get everything that we have now. That's what I'll say about that. But
it did do that. We had to get there somehow.
Yeah.
But it was painful along the way, I gotta say.
No, I totally agree with you. And with you being a Scarlet Witch fan, like, how did you react when you saw her in the classic Scarlet Witch outfit? Because this is something that they joke about, like when the original X-Men movies came out. Remember, they said that you can't have the comic book versions of those outfits in the movies because it's like they look campy, they don't look right on camera. But it's just like they did an amazing job on WandaVision. Like, I love seeing them in those classic outfits.
It was so much. So the Halloween episode, I loved. It was campy. It was fun. It was like, this is the heart of comic fans to see, like, the boxer briefs on the outside, or the gym shorts, and the hot colors for Vision and whatnot. But her ultimate outfit, and they gave her tiara.
Yep.
They didn't chicken out on it. I was so happy that they pulled through, because they danced around it a lot in the other movies. And seeing them finally commit to it and not overtly sexualizing her either. Just, it was costume poetry. And seeing, like, the little symbol that was the Mind Stone, like, close to Wanda's heart, for like a little representation of Vision, having her tiara, but still having like an elegant silhouette that you can distinctly see that that's a different character. Like, if you put Wanda in silhouette versus Black Widow versus Captain Marvel versus Wasp, everyone else kind of has the same silhouette, more or less.
Yeah.
Because it's just a skin tight.
Yeah, it's just
armory.
Yeah.
But Wanda now has a very lovely silhouette that's still evocative of her cape and her comic book outfit. I mean, she's worn some really out there costumes and outfits.
I agree. I'll say that they did a really good job at combining her classic outfits and her new modern outfit. I'll say that they did a really good job of doing that, and I'm just waiting to see like what's going to happen now when we see Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, and because like Wanda, she's a villain. I mean, it's just like how WandaVision ended. it's just like all of those people in town, like they don't look at her as a hero. It's just like, yeah, you did save us from Agatha, but it's just like you had us under your spell. Like you saw what some of the people were saying. It's just like I had a family. Like I haven't seen my husband in weeks. Like my family might think that I'm dead, and you had us here. So it's so many questions that I want to be answered, especially with what we had on Loki. Like I can't wait to see what's going to happen in Doctor Strange. So to kind of segue back into cosplay, I wanted to ask you, like, what are some of your favorite cosplays that you've worn?
Ooh, well, that's a lot. I'll go cosplays and not characters because I have a lot of different outfits for the same characters. So like I have several Poison Ivy, I have several Scarlet Witch, I have a lot of different ones, but I gotta say top of the list as well, besides my Sally, Deadpool. I was Lady Deadpool before Lady Deadpool was in the comics.
Nice.
And I met a lot of the Deadpool writers and like Rob Liefeld, and I even have a shout out in a Deadpool comic. And so I'm like, I feel like I had something to do with Lady Deadpool because I had my hair exposed, but it was in a braid. She has her hair exposed. There's a lot of stuff I was doing. I'm seeing you, Marvel. I know that sometimes they like to gain inspiration from fans.
No, you're right. I mean, because I had a cosplayer up here, Jenna Say What, and she had cosplayed in Harley Quinn. It was similar to like X Factor colors where it was black and gray, and then DC they ended up coming out with the same it was pretty much her cosplay. Like she was the first person to ever even do that color scheme, and then DC, they revealed it like a couple of weeks later. So it's just like you never know who's looking, you never know who's watching. Like that's something that we always say in wrestling, where it's just like you always want to put on your best performance because you never know who's sitting in that crowd, and it's just like they might see something that they like, or with wrestling it's just like they might see something that they like and just like, hey, I want you to come wrestle for my promotion. And then the same thing like with people who go to conventions, it's just like they might see somebody that did their own spin on a character, and it's just like, hey, like we should go with that.
Exactly. So I cosplayed Deadpool in 2009 at San Diego Comic-Con. I was the Associated Press's photo for Comic-Con that year.
Nice,
nice. For preview night, it was so much fun. So Deadpool's up there, but now I don't really cosplay Deadpool as much just because there are so many other people that take their own spin on Deadpool, and when you see too many of the same costumes at a con, it can get a little exhausting. But it comes in waves. Like, Comic-Con the year The Dark Knight came out. Everybody had a Heath Ledger Joker. It was Batman and Heath Ledger. Yep. And then, of course, a couple years ago, it was the Suicide Squad Harley from the movie. And that's fine. Like, those costumes are great. Have fun with them. If you've made them, great. If you bought them, great. If you commissioned them, wonderful. But it can get a little exhausting when you see like your 20th one. But no shade to those.
No, I feel you. It's like the thing with Deadpool. It's just like it can kind of become oversaturated when you see like 300 Deadpool at one con, and then it's like those 300 Deadpool, it's like they become like one giant group of Deadpools, and now it's just like you have an army of Deadpools. It's kind of like that joke where it's just like, would you fight one giant Deadpool or would you fight 300 duck-sized Deadpools? You know what I'm saying?
I opt out of this fight. That doesn't sound like a fun way either.
Yeah, it doesn't. I like, just go ahead and take me now. That's what I would say. Just take me. I'm good. But now I wanted to ask you, like, when you're not cosplaying, like, what are some of your hobbies that you're into?
Well, I do love to still draw and to paint.
Nice.
I haven't really been doing much of that lately, but a lot of the hobbies that I already had translate really well into cosplay. And I think that's why I put a lot of focus into it, just because you learn so many different skills trying to make it work, right? The Project Runway, make it work. For example, this Scarlet Witch tiara that I'm wearing, I used jewelry wire and learned how to use those tools in order to shape it, and then did all the beading and things like that. And I've never been interested in making jewelry before, but when you gotta do it, you gotta do it, right?
Yeah, and the tiara, it looks really nice. Like, because when I was doing my research on you and I saw the tiara, I thought that it was different. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like most of the time you see people when they do the Scarlet Witch, they just have the traditional tiara, but like this is something that you created and you put your own twist on it. So that's awesome.
Thank you. It's an adaptation of the artist Kevin Wada. He did the covers for the Scarlet Witch series that happened a few years ago, and he designed this outfit for Wanda. So having a jeweled tiara and having a shorter cape and a less unitard kind of Playboy bunny outfit, but more, Wanda can be in pants. That's great.
Yeah, more traditional, modern look to Wanda, where and like that's something too that I love about when you have these newer versions of comic book characters, because of course when they were drawn years ago, like they were drawn to look like that because it's like they wanted to appeal to boys, teenage boys and stuff like that, whereas now being a nerd, like anybody can be a nerd. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like you want to make sure that you don't over sexualize a character, because that little girl that's reading that comic, it's like she might want to cosplay as that character. And of course, her parent isn't going to let her cosplay as a Playboy bunny dressed Wanda. You know what I'm saying? So something that I wanted to kind of piggyback off of, because you had mentioned it earlier in the interview, was horror. Now, I want to ask you, like, what are some of your favorite horror movies?
Ooh, okay. Well, I'm not big on slasher fics or anything with jump scares. I like more psychological horror. So think Silence of the Lambs, pretty much any. Not any. I was gonna say any Hannibal Lecter things, but no, I'm kind of choosy on that.
Yeah,
like Red Dragon's really good. The show Hannibal was really good up until the 3rd season. Don't come at me. What else? Oh, the Witch, or the Vivitch, as I like to say.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was different. Like all the A24 films are really good, and I watched that movie a couple of years ago for the first time, and it was different. It was weird, and that's the one thing that I love about A24 films, is because I love movies that make you think, and I love movies. I love what they do with their films, where it's just like after you watch it, it's just like you have to go and do a deep dive and find, well, this is the reason why this was there, or this was the reason why that was there. So that's one of the things that I love about those films. And this is a question that Dee always asks our guests on the Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks podcast. But if you had to choose one horror movie from the 80s that was your favorite, what would that movie be?
From the 80s.
80s or 90s. He always throws 90s in there too, but 80s or 90s, if you had to choose one.
Well, considering that the genre mostly focused on slasher movies, like not Psycho, 60s, like Scream or things like that. I mean, I'd have to fall back on Silence of the Lambs again, because 1990, that counts, right? That counts.
Oh yeah, no, it does. It does. It's always interesting when you ask somebody like what's their favorite horror movie, or if they had to choose one, because it's like everybody usually has something different. But sometimes like you will get people who will say Alien or The Thing, and The Thing is like one of my favorite horror movies of all time. But it's just interesting to see what people say, because a lot of people, like, they aren't into the same type of horror films, and like how you had said, it's just like the psychological thrillers, like those films, like they make you think, and it's like they keep you on the edge of your seat, because it's just like, okay, well, who done it? Like, what's going to happen next? Like, who is the killer? Like, I want to know. And, with that being said, Silver, I just want to say thank you for joining me on another episode of Who's That Cosplayer? And the one final question that I have for you before I wrap this thing up is, to anybody that would like to get into the world of cosplay, what is some advice that you will offer to them?
Don't be afraid. It is a wonderful community. We have a lot of people who are advocates for body positivity, for cosplaying anything that you want to be. And it doesn't matter what the character looks like. If you want to dress up as them, do it. Mm-hmm. I used to constrict myself to only characters that I identified with, because one, I put that energy into it, and two, that I kind of look like or could pass off looking like, because I have to be the character. It's not that. It's not a competition, even when you're competing. It's not being better than anyone else. It's having fun and playing pretend and dressing up. We can all identify with that.
Mm-hmm. And that's what it's all about. When it comes to cosplay, it's about doing what you want to do, and that is just having a fun time, meeting new friends, and creating new memories. And like, that's what cosplay is about. So Tallest Silver, thank you again so much for joining me on Who's That Cosplayer. And before I let you go, let everybody in social media land know where they can find you at.
You can find me on Facebook, Tallest Silver, or you can find me on Instagram, Tallest Silver. You can find me on TikTok, Tallest_Silver. YouTube, but I really don't post there much, guys. That would be Tallest Silver. Basically everything but Twitter is Tallest Silver.
Man, I like it. It's like, that's your name, and it's cool because a lot of people, it's like they can't put that one name on everything because it's taken, but you have it on everything except TikTok because of the underscore. So I just want to say thank you again for joining me on another episode of Who's That Cosplayer. You know where you can find me, your hero Benjamin Banks, at KingBenji_Banks on Twitter and Instagram. You can find me on Facebook at Benjamin Banks. I should be the first person to pop up. If not, then I need to contact Mr. Zuckerberg. Thank you again, everybody, for watching a brand new episode of Who's That Cosplayer. Like I always say, keep that pinky up, stay positive. We'll see you next time on Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks. Peace.
Thanks again, everybody, for watching another episode of Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe to the channel. Podcast, we got that too. Make sure you give us a thumbs up and hit that bell for further episodes and notifications. Thanks a lot to our patrons. And if you don't mind, join the Patreon. We'll be having new specials coming up soon.